Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the Divine Union podcast. And if it's your first time joining us today, I am so thrilled to have you here. Welcome. Today is going to be an amazing episode. One of my favorite topics that we're digging back into, polarity. And today we're going to talk about how you can use principles of polarity to deepen intimacy and passion in relationship. Now, mind you, this can apply to all relationships because in a perfect world, all of our relationships are filled with intimacy. We always want to deepen in connection with who we're relating with, as well as we want to have passion. We want to have aliveness in all of our relationships. So these principles apply to both, even though I'll be focusing on romantic relationships. And I'm so excited because this hit transmission for this topic came from a client session I had, both one-on-one with the masculine, so with a man, as well as a couple session. And I was like, okay, I need to do a episode on this topic so that you have more awareness, understanding of polarity, and awareness as to how you can use polarity to deepen your connection and to bring more passion into the relationship. And this is something that I do in all of my work that I do, is teaching folks principles of polarity and embodying polarity in how we show up, because that's going to bring polarity in relationship. So what is polarity? For those of you who don't know, polarity is what creates magnetic attraction. Now, polarity is founded on this idea of opposites attract. So we live in a polarity world. We have both light and dark. These are two opposing forces. Other polarities that can come up in relationship is heaviness with lightness. So, for example, let's say you're working through, and you can also bring that to light and dark. Yeah. Let's say that we're working through conflict in relationship, or you bring up something heavy in relationship. What you want to do in a perfect world is you want to balance that out with the other polarity so that it feels more balanced. So we want to bring a little bit of lightness to the heaviness. Now, you can do that in many ways. This is such a deep concept, so I'm going to try my best to break it down with some examples for you to chew on. If I'm bringing up a heavy conflict, how do I lighten the energy, lighten the space a bit? One way is looking, if you're both looking at each other, looking in each other's eyes, you're both in the masculine. Yeah. You're both active. You're penetrating each other with your energy, with your eyes. So if you're bringing up conflict, doing it while you're going on a hike, yeah, it adds a third activity. It lightens the tension. It lightens the attention on the topic and allows the defenses to soften a bit, and brings more naturally, because you're also focused on a third activity, it brings in more curiosity, it brings in more openness as you're each unpacking each other's perspectives on the topic. Give another example when it comes to intimacy. This is something that I've seen in my work. And let's say you're a masculine or feminine being, yeah? Let's say you're initiating intimacy. Let's say you're doing it in a way that's all like, it's all sexy. You're being all sexy. You're being all serious. It can work. It works. But sometimes, especially if you're dealing with a more avoidant partner who may be more avoidant towards intimacy, you have to be mindful of balancing out the initiation, especially if it's a partner who's more avoidant and maybe doesn't crave intimacy as much as you do, physical intimacy as much as you do. It takes them more warming up. A way that you can do that is with humor. Now, this brings in the opposite polarity. So you're going all serious, all sexy, and then maybe it's like you turn around, maybe you're like, I got a little surprise for us waiting in the bedroom. Yeah. but you're going to have to wait to find out. Maybe you're like, for those of you who are not watching the video, I'd like lick my finger and I'm like, do something silly. I'm on fire, right? I'm sizzling. Like make a little bit of a joke to bring lightness into the intimacy. So what it does is it lets it land like, ooh, I got a little sexy surprise for us. I want to bring you into the bedroom, but I can also play. And it creates less pressure for partner if they're not in a mood, or giving them more spaciousness to get in the mood, to get on board, like letting it land subtly, or you're not subtle, but you're saying it, but you're letting it land and you're letting them feel into it. And it's that dance that's really, really powerful, because if I'm trying to be super sexy all the time, it's so heavy and like we're so serious in bed. We can't have joy. We miss the joy. We miss the childlike play. We miss the, wow, you just made a face. I once had a lover. This is so funny. And I did something wild. I was like, and I like grabbed him and kind of dug my nails into his arms. And he was like, he was like really turned on by it. Yeah, but it was his reaction to it to me was so funny. I burst out laughing. And it was like bringing in the humor, right? Because if I like matched, and that was my natural reaction, I'm not forcing that, but like him being like in such a, I'm like super sexy vibe right now was funny. And it lightened the mood. And then he laughed hysterically. And then we had some joy. And then we went back to making love, right? And it's this mix when we can have this balance of sexiness or intimacy, and then like making a funny joke, giving yourself a little spank on the bum if you're trying to be sexy, like doing funny things. It lightens it and it creates this interesting texture in relationship that is magnetic and that allows both parties, especially when you're dealing with more avoidant energies, with usually someone in the relationship is more avoidant. It makes them be able to stomach the intimacy. And I know this because I have both sides to me. Intimacy feels way too heavy for me when there's not humor and there's not play and we don't find ways to lighten it. But I also have that heavy feminine side. I know from who I used to be and why I do this work with couples and with the feminine for this particular thing is like many times as a feminine being, feminine is more focused on love and connection. The masculine energy, we all have both, is more focused on independence and freedom. And so, as a feminine being, if you're all like, I love you so much, babe, I want to look into your eyes, let's have these sexy moments, but there's not finding ways to lighten. The relationship can often lose that passion that the masculine energy, the person with more masculine energy, needs to want to deepen in intimacy. And so, it's having a sensitivity is what I do in my work. It's cultivating this sensitivity. And I want to invite you to think about it. Two dynamics of when we need that opposing energy. When is it so serious that I need to lighten the mood? When is there a lot of lightness that I want to bring a little more serious and depth and intimacy in? And this is also noticing your own meter of when do I want to disconnect? You can practice this with your friends if you're not partnered. You can honestly, even if you are partnered, you should practice this with everyone. When do I want to disconnect? Like when is the intimacy so heavy? So for example, if I'm with a sister of mine and we're having a beautiful moment of sharing, let's say we talk about really something deep, maybe we share something from our soul channel, our darkest nights of the soul, and it's beautiful and it's deep. We look at each other, and then we give a big hug. What happens for me afterwards? What happens? I feel a little like, ooh, antsy in my skin. Yeah, I want to disconnect. I want to have some spaciousness. Ooh, I want to let that beautiful moment of intimacy land. And when we don't have spaciousness, it can't land and we can't truly soak in the beautiful gem of moment of connection we had. And so it's noticing when you want to disconnect and giving permission to do that. So for me, then maybe I'll like shake it off. I get up, I like shake it out, I dance it off, or I look away. I look at the nature. Even though we're still together, I allow myself to disconnect. Or maybe, I'm like, "Ooh, yes, that was a beautiful moment." Like, this is what I do. I sing to myself, or I dance, or I make a little silly joke. I find a way to lighten the space, because if we don't lighten the space, then there's no ability to reconnect and go deeper again. And so it's understanding that polarity in relationship and using polarity to allow us to deepen in intimacy and to deepen in passion. So it's noticing, yeah, just to recap that, it's noticing when you desire to disconnect and finding ways to do it. So even if you say something really beautiful to partner, you have a really beautiful moment of intimacy, and then maybe you get up and you go grab a glass of water. Yeah. Now, at first, it may feel like games are manufactured, and you want to notice if you're going in that route. We don't want to go there. But eventually, when you have a conscious understanding of polarity and you're more tuned into your own body and your own intimacy meter and attuned to your partner's intimacy meter, you're going to understand how to navigate the energetics of polarity more seamlessly in a way that allows you to maintain that connection, maintains that passion, that excitement that stands the test of time. And I don't want to say stands the test of time, because obviously the only constant in life is change. So you can't guarantee, but you're more likely to have passion long term when you can master this skill. This is why this is one of the 4 components of the union method, which is my method that I use in my one-on-one work and my couples work. And in my group programs, it's the foundational elements, polarity being one of them, and understanding and learning about these energetics of polarity. The other one is working with balancing, healing and balancing of our masculine and feminine energies, as well as working with our communication, verbal, nonverbal, energetic, and wholeness and sovereignty, and always operating from a space of choice. So heaviness, finding ways to bring in lightness. If we're talking about crunchy, dark topics, finding ways to also bring in some light, some joy. Because if as a couple, you're always talking about the negative 90% of the time, working through conflict, having negative interactions, you want to bring balance to that as close as you can. We're also having good interactions. We're uplifting each other. We're complimenting each other. We're having fun. We're doing adventures. If it's all fun and games and there's no seriousness and depth of intimacy, right, you're off balance. Also, when we think of polarity, so you can also think about masculine and feminine energies. It comes back to that. That's why I do this work. It's because if one person's always in one pole of the feminine pole of receiving, responsive desire, um, being soft, surrendering, being in flow, and the others more in the masculine pole of initiating sex, initiating intimacy, active role, doing the planning, leading the direction of the relationship, setting the goals, creating the structure, the safety. It's boring because we are not able to tune into our full range in relationship. And so when we want to have that polarity in relationship, that magnetic attraction, that spark, both parties have to actively practice tuning into their active and passive roles in different times of the relationship. So during the communication, during the planning, during the emotional intimacy, during the physical intimacy, both parties got to lead and follow. Both parties got to initiate and surrender. In a conversation, both parties impart wisdom. Both parties ask questions. Now, this is something, actually, if you're based in Chicago, that I will be teaching. I couldn't be more excited to teach on this topic in my upcoming sessions on September 5th for individuals and September 6th for couples only. And I'll be teaching on this dance of the balance of the energies, what happens when we're off balance within, what being off balance can look like in relationship, what is masculine energy, what's feminine energy, and getting to play with embodying these different energies in tandem with others. And this is also something, if you're not based in Chicago, but you're keen to learn more about, the Balance Blueprint, which I'll also put in the show notes, is my new PDF guide. And it's focused on, which is the first step to balance in relationship, but it's focused on internal balance and giving you some areas to think about, both on the active and passive side, so the masculine and feminine side, of where you can bring more balance within to bring more balance in relationship. It's literally an incredible guide, such a steal for the value. It's only $11. So if you want to learn more, this will be an amazing resource for you with some tools and practices to connect to the energetics of the balance of the energies. Yeah, so for polarity, it's lightness to dark, right? Lightening the heaviness, as well as tuning into our active and passive energies and fluxing between them in relationship, in partnership. Now, it really just takes one person who's balanced, because if you're balanced, you know how to bring the opposing energy. You know when the moment or your partner needs the opposing energy. So if I am want to feel my partner's vulnerability, I know how to skillfully step into my healthy masculine energy that invites them into their feminine. Now, if I come at them from a feminine angle of like, I missed you so much, and I want to hear that back from them, I'm not going to invite their feminine. And this is complicated. So this is not something I can just teach in a podcast episode, that my life's work is around this, but it's learning how to pull out the opposing energy from your partner. If you want to feel your partner go into their masculine and make more plans for the relationship and take action in that way, there's also ways that you can do that energetically and conversationally to invite them into their masculine so that you can then sink back into your feminine and receive. I love playing with the energetics, and it's so powerful because it's really about self-mastery that then is relationship mastery, that creates that dynamic, and the sky is the limit for the kind of intimacy and depth and passion that we can create. And when we can master the balance of our energetics and of the polarities, that's where, so much beauty comes pouring out of that. So I want to keep this short because I love bite-sized nuggets. This is such a deep topic. There'll be so much more to come on polarity, but I will leave you with thinking about tuning into when you want to disconnect, when intimacy is feeling too heavy, allowing yourself to bring spaciousness to it. So whether it be by bringing in, as I said, a third activity to talking about conflict, or if you're talking about conflict, finding a way to lighten it, make a silly joke, make a little face, allow yourself to do a dance to lighten your own energy, finding ways to do that. Also finding ways, if you're talking about heavy stuff, to bring in a compliment here and there and something genuine. Of course, it's all genuine, but finding ways to reinstill the love, even a touch on the partners, the small of their back as you're saying something heavy, to bring more balance to the relationship by using polarity. And you have any questions on this topic, shoot me a DM on Instagram or Facebook, because this will also help me. I'd be happy to answer any questions and bring that energy into a future podcast episode, because there will be so many more on this topic. So thank you for joining me on today's episode of Divine Union Podcast. It's been such a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you all next week. And until then, may all your unions be divine.